Hey guys, welcome into the Shadow Box. My name is Carlise. I am your host. I'm also your grief and trauma coach and your shadow work guide. Today with us, I have Mel Robinson. Mel is joining us from Bedford, England, and she's going to share her story with us about her grief journey. And she is the founder of Echoes of the Soul Grief Support. She is a mother of two boys, and she actually started her business February of 2025. So she's relatively new to the grief support team, so to speak, but she is very familiar with the community of grief. So, Mel, go ahead and give us a little bit more information about yourself.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you, Carlise, for inviting me on to the Shadow Box. This is an amazing opportunity for me. And yeah, I thank you for giving me this space. So yeah, I think you've covered a lot about me already. I'm Mel. I'm 34, soon to be 35 next month. And yeah, I'm a mother of two boys. I live with them and my partner and my little dog, Millie. And yeah, as you've shared already, I'm pretty new to, sharing in this space, but it has been one hell of a journey to get here. So
Mhm.
yeah, thank you for having me here.
Definitely. And we are going to start your journey because it has been a very interesting journey. And I just want to say that I'm glad that you are still here with us. I'm glad that you are still able to um, share the story that you have with a sane mind, put it that way. Right.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Okay, so Mel, go ahead and just start telling us about your childhood and how that unfolded for you.
Yeah. So life began when I was born to my two parents, Leighton and Jackie. And my mum had me when she was 48. So she
Mm.
was quite late on in life having me. They did conceive me naturally, which everyone was really surprised by. And yeah, I was the only child of my parents, so the only daughter. My mum did have two sons prior to me, but yeah, they were slightly older and with a different father. So yeah, I always knew life to be just me, my mum, and my dad, and that's how it was for the first 4 years of my life until my mum unfortunately was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And yeah, she had it for a while. From what I've been told, she had it for a while. Don't know all the ins and outs of it, but yeah, unfortunately, she did die, and yeah, life was a bit of a whirlwind after that. To be honest,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it was a lot, especially being so young. Um, I'm still trying to recall things now, and that bit has been quite difficult. Uh, but yeah, so being with obviously my parents to begin with, and then obviously my mum passing away. It was just me and my dad, and I did actually have au pairs as well. I had some nannies that used to look after me.
Okay.
Um, so my dad, yeah, he did need some help. Um, and he was a chef as well, so he worked long hours and yeah, needed the support. But cut a long story,
Bye.
he ultimately ended up meeting someone quite soon after my mum died. So it was about 6 months after. And yeah, I just remember at that time just feeling very confused because where I live now isn't where I was brought up. I was brought up in a place called Hatfield, which was about 45 minutes from where I live now. And we ultimately ended up moving from the family home in with my dad's partner at the time. And yeah, it was just a lot of upheaval, a lot of, different, it just was a very different time. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I didn't know what to make of it, to be honest.
Yeah. And that's a lot of shifting, right? I mean,
Mm,
you shifted from having a mother to not having a mother, grieving your mother because she's not coming back, and your 4-year-old mind trying to my 4-year-old mind trying to really process that. Where is that processing? And then you're into another home with another woman and your father. That's a lot.
Mm,
That's a lot just to, I like how you said that you're still trying to recoup, from that because you couldn't think of anything in a particular substance, I would say, at 5 years old. But now that you're 34 going into 35, everything is in retrospect. So
yeah.
now it's like, what was that 5-year-old going through? How was that? What, what now, since you are 34, what do you see your grieving process looking like at 5?
Yeah, I just feel like at that time, I, I just wasn't given the time or the space. I didn't know where my mum had gone. I
Mm.
probably had a number and one questions, but no one to answer because, being honest, my dad was like what you would class as like the emotional unavailable. So
Okay.
although he was, what I remember to be this really cute, teddy bear, like larger than life, and giving me all the attention and the affection and things like that, um, like on the emotional level, he was checked out, and I can understand it now, because he just become a widow. Like he probably had his own stuff going on, but
Definitely.
yeah, just the thing that I've always struggled with is not understanding why he moved on so quickly.
Mm.
Because yeah, to me it's just baffling.
Yeah.
But
And especially because you didn't have the explanation. You didn't have that sit down talk about what was actually transpiring in your life. How would you feel if your father were to bring another woman into your life? What that would look like. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that had you had that explanation, even as a young girl, you would have known what you were kind of going into, right?
mm,
And you
mm,
wouldn't have known exactly how the atmosphere was going to be like, and we'll get into that. But you would have known, like, okay, my dad and I are both going into a different process. We're going into a different environment. This is something that I feel safe doing because dad has talked to me. We're doing this together. But it sounds like you were just kind of picked up and placed
yeah.
in a situation. Tell us about that migration into that new environment.
Yeah, I think you've just said it perfectly there, really. It just felt like, yeah, bundled up and just plonked, really. Like, I don't remember any conversations. Obviously, it's a long time ago for me now, but I don't remember anyone having them conversations with me to
Mhm.
say, that, dad's moved on, or he's found someone new and this is what life's going to look like now. It was just, I don't know, it just all felt very rushed and just confusing. That's the only words I can describe it as, really. Um, but yeah, obviously we moved into my dad's partner's home at the time, and just very early on, I just felt like I was the baggage that came with my dad. I felt very, to the side, um, seen and not heard type of vibe, where it was, yeah, we know that you're there, but yeah, don't be there. So
And was that mainly from your dad's partner, or was it from your dad and the partner, or
no, just from I'd say more from my dad's partner. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, my dad, I talk about this quite openly. My dad, he was, like I said, that big, larger than life character, and he was the one that, yeah, he would do anything for me. He would do anything to make me happy. And yeah, obviously, what I'm about to share, it doesn't have a reflection on my dad at all. Um, but I definitely felt like I was a hindrance, and I was made to feel like that very early on. Um, and yeah, as time went on, it was, things would take place when my dad wasn't around. Like I said, my dad worked long hours, was still continuing to have the au pairs and the nannies that would help. But it would, start off as, having a little smack here and there. But then it became, yeah, quite regular. what I would class as beatings, not just with hands, but with items as well. And a lot of the time it would take place when, my dad's partner had alcohol. She used to drink in the evenings,
Mhm.
quite excessively. And yeah, I was basically the punching bag. Um, and yeah, like I said, my dad he wasn't around at the time, to see these things take place. It was always when he wasn't around. And that continued from the age of 5 to 13. Um,
Okay. And just so putting this in context, you and your father moved into your father's partner's home,
yeah,
and it was your father's partner that was excessively drinking and started to abuse you, physically abuse you.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
It was abuse on every level. It was the verbal abuse as well, the emotional abuse, name calling, and just a lot of put downs, and I say like manipulation, narcissistic behaviour, gaslighting, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Um, and a lot of the blame would be put on me. You made me do these things, and it's your fault. I don't want you here. Some things would be said like that. Um, but yeah, very early on, my dad, I do remember my dad sitting down with me, and he asked me to start calling her mum, which
Mm.
I agreed to do. And yeah, looking back on it, that's not the behaviour of a mother. That's not what I needed at that time. And I needed someone to take me under their wing, and give me the care and love that my mum once did. It should have continued that way, and it was just the complete opposite.
Yeah, that nurturing aspect. And um something that we're going to talk about a little bit later is that parent pleasing versus people pleasing.
Mhm.
And then you were just talking and saying that your father asked you to call her mom and you agreed to it. It kind of sounds like that's where that parent pleasing started at,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Sure.
So that's an interesting topic. For you going in and starting to call her mom, I'm assuming, and him asking you to do so, I'm assuming that dad didn't know the abuse was going on.
No, no, he was never aware. Yeah, that's one thing I want to point out is that a bit like what you're saying about the parent pleasing, because my dad was never there when things would take place.
Well,
Obviously injuries would occur or whatever, but yeah, it's my dad. He's not going to see me in that way.
mhm,
So, yeah, a lot of the time when it would happen, he obviously wasn't aware, and I never made him aware either. That's one thing that I've spoke openly about, is that I never shared with my dad what had happened in that house. Um, and yeah, a lot of people don't understand it. They question it, why. And yeah, was my dad that oblivious to things going on? But I just, again, I guess it's a defense thing, but I just think my dad, his head must have been up in the clouds, because he only just buried his wife. He's now in a new relationship, and yeah, it's taken me a lot of work to get here to understand it. And yeah, obviously there's been a lot of anger. There's been a lot of questions, that are not going to be answered until we're reunited. But yeah, for now, I have to just accept that, this is what he chose to do, and he did it for a reason. But in my eyes, it was the worst decision that he made, really.
yeah. Do you blame yourself at times for not telling him, or what is that dialogue for you like in your mind?
Yeah, I think sometimes I do think, yeah, I should have reached out. And obviously, as we'll delve into it more, I did reach out for help, and there were people that knew what was going on, and I didn't get the help that I deserved. So yeah, I do feel like, yeah, there is blame there, on my part, where I think I could have spoke up. But when you're in amongst all that, it just becomes the norm, as sad as that sounds. It's
Yeah.
you feel like it's that victim mode where I feel like I am the victim, but I've also become the survivor. But in that time, I did feel like, well, this is just my life now. This is how it's going to be. So
And
it's
not only that, you already lost a mother, right? So you lost your mother, you're going into this new environment. The last thing you want to do is ruffle any feathers or upset your father because then there goes you don't know what would happen, what the outcome would be. Like, would you get in trouble for saying that this lady is acting the way that she's acting towards you? Would that mean that you were going to lose your father? Does that mean that you guys lose your home? So all of the loss that you had already experienced, your little mind couldn't take anymore. And
yeah,
so, and it wasn't even about her or even about the environment. It's about, am I going to lose my dad because he chose this woman? And would he choose her before me? Or because right now it kind of looks like that as far as the abuse that you were experiencing. And I'm pretty sure that somewhere in there, dad knew that you weren't happy, right?
mm,
Kids can't really just be like, put on that smile and face all the time. If you're really good at it, you can. But
mm.
the amount of abuse that you were experiencing, there's no way that you were just walking around jolly all the time,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
no, sure.
Yeah.
And I
So,
think, sorry to cut off. I just feel like in the pictures that I do have, you can see that, you
mhm,
know, like you say, wearing a mask and things.
yeah,
There were times that I would do that. Um, but yeah, just the mask doesn't stay on forever. Slowly
no,
go away.
yeah. Um, okay. So you experienced the abuse in the home with her, and this is from 5 to 13.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to assume that the marks and things that she bruising and things that she was causing you, she wasn't doing them in places that could be seen.
Yeah,
These
that's
were other
yeah.
parts of your body.
Yeah. So yeah, it would always be mainly to the body. I did have one quite bad injury that was on my lip. That was once I was in middle school. Um, that she'd inflicted on me, but I actually went to school and I'd covered my face with a scarf. And I went into school and obviously had the scarf, and it was a bit like, the film The Grinch where he's got all the
Yeah.
paper bag on. It was a bit like that in that sense. Not to
Mhm.
make light of it, but yeah, I had the scarf round, and obviously the teacher said, can you take off all your bits and everything? And as soon as I took off the scarf, everyone gasped, and quickly the teacher ushered me out. And obviously I had to have a sit down and a talk about what had happened. Um, but yeah, nothing actually came of that. But
Yeah.
obviously that was later on.
And I kind of forget that these were school age years as well,
Mm,
because you didn't feel safe enough to even tell the people at your school that you
mm,
were being abused. And she had a particular background or particular profession.
mm.
Do you think that that played a role in whether or not you thought that people would believe you? And tell us about her profession.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, she had always worked as a nurse, and she was also in the army as well. So she was very masculine energy. In the way that she presented herself. The way that she would dress and look. It was the short hair, and the sort of manly clothes. And from early on, it was just always about structure, routine, and always felt like I just couldn't step out of line. You'd have like your typical chores and things that I would have to do. Um, but yeah, it was very militant, in that sense. But yeah, going back to what you're saying, that I think it's that kind of narcissistic behavior and attitude that comes to mind, is that because of what she did for work, why are they going to believe a little girl over someone that presents himself as caring and loving and a good person within the community?
Right.
That yeah, why are they going to believe me over her, you know? And she also liked to play like what I call the martyr. So
Mm.
it would be the crying and the wailing, you know, really loud, and look what she's done, and you know, she's hurt me, you know, because obviously I would defend myself as I got older, I would. And it would be, yeah, like, look what she's done, and look at the mess you're creating, and things like that would come to mind. But yeah, a lot of the time it would be that, to be honest.
Yeah. Um, so what's the feeling of not having a safety structure around and
Mm,
from such a young age, um, and surviving, surviving in that space that you were always in fight or flight.
mm,
You didn't know what was going to happen from one day to the other. And the person that you loved the most, that was big enough to protect you, that was all the things to protect you, you didn't feel safe enough because of the environment, not because of him,
yeah,
to express, that I'm being hurt, I'm not safe, I don't feel comfortable, any of that. So
yeah.
all of that just trapped up in your mind, that is that's a scary space to be in.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there's a lot to carry as well, you know, and it's what I've had to carry for my whole life, really. Because like saying it's well, the thing I remember the most is feeling like walking on eggshells.
Mhm.
See how it is. You just didn't know what mood she was gonna be in, you know, and yeah, because it was almost like Jekyll and Hyde. So yeah, sometimes she'd be really nice, like overly nice, and then you'd get the ugly side where it'd be like, I don't dare go downstairs, you know. And yeah, one thing that comes to mind with talking is that we used to have two living spaces. So she'd be in one room and I'd go in the other, but the TVs were actually connected. So yeah, one of the things I remember is that when I come back to like the routine and the structure, I couldn't even watch things that I wanted to watch
Mhm.
because the TVs were connected. So whatever she was watching, I had to watch. You know, and my room, it just consisted of a lot of books. I did get a PC for my birthday one year, but yeah, a lot of the time it would be, you know, me either up in my room or it would be me in that middle room, but never a feeling of coming together and,
Yeah.
you know, what you see is your typical family sitting at a dinner table and smiling and happy. It was very lonely, to be honest.
When
Okay.
your father was, there and participating in the home, what was that dynamic like when you guys were all in one place together?
Yeah, still, even with that, I just feel like it was just very separated. So
Mhm.
it'd be like them having their time and me just on my own, or I'd be with like the au pair. Obviously, the au pair was there a lot of the time. They would take me to school, um, and yeah, bring me home and make sure that I was fed and stuff like that. But a lot of the time, it was just me spending time on my own.
Okay. Were you the only child in the home?
Yeah, it was just us. It was just me, my dad, and his partner, and then the au pair.
Okay. And did your dad and her, did they seem like they had a loving relationship, or were they kind of separate too?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I felt like there was, yeah, definitely some sort of love there. I mean, there must have been something that brought them together. I can't pinpoint point what, but yeah,
Yeah.
like, there must have been something there because, yeah, after a couple of years, they decided to get married. So, again, that just changed a lot of things because it wasn't just my dad's partner. It's now that my dad's gonna get remarried and he's gonna have a wife again.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say it must have been something, or something that brought them together. However, it could have been, your dad as a new widow and him thinking for the long term of what am I going to do with this daughter that I have? Like,
Yeah.
am I going to be able to do this on my own? She needs a woman in her life. He didn't know the monster that he was getting, but she needs, someone in her life. And it could have been more of a strategic move,
Yeah.
and it seemed like, okay, she may be uncomfortable for a little bit. This may shock her for a minute, but I need the help because I don't know how to do this myself.
Mm.
And then you have the lady, and she was probably really sweet and what have you to him because he's a new widow, you know? So it's like, hey, it's opportunity right there for her. And so just thinking about the different portions that went into this, it was probably it seemed like it started more of a structural deal than a relationship that was made out of love and let's become a family and let me take your daughter under my wing and we can just do this. It may have been more structured and that may help you forgive. I don't know if I want to say forgive, but have more peace in that space with dad, um, because he's a man
Yeah.
and men think differently, right?
Yeah.
Men think structurally. But you have parents that say, widow parents that say, hey, I have to have someone hurry up and get in to take this space because I can't do this. I need someone to care for this child. And then you have the other ones on the other end of the spectrum that's like, no,
Mm.
absolutely not having anyone around my child, right? Um, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that perspective in there because maybe it was a little bit of that too.
Yeah. And like I said, I won't know until we're reunited again. I'm going to have lots of questions for him.
Lots
Uh,
of questions, lots of I need answers.
I need answers, yeah, basically. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think it was more that he was trying to fill that void, really. So I think he was doing it. It was coming from a good space. It's
yeah,
just for me. It's just been one of the things that I just can't get my head around.
yeah. So, fast forward in the middle of all of this,
Yeah.
there was another shakeup, and go ahead and just tell us about that.
Yeah. So obviously, I mentioned that my dad married his partner, and they became husband and wife. And then, yeah, it was a few years later where my dad started to become unwell. He became quite poorly very quickly. I had, like I say, I keep going back to this, but my dad was this teddy bear. He was, over 20 stone. Yeah, big character.
Mhm.
And he then became this shell of a person, you know. He, yeah, was about, say, 8 stone at the
Okay.
end of everything, yeah, and he ultimately was diagnosed with stomach cancer, which started
Mm,
off as a misdiagnosis. So, yeah,
okay.
he was told that he had an ulcer, and then it, yeah, progressed that, he actually had stomach cancer.
Okay. And you were how old at that time?
So it would have been when I was about 9,
Okay.
yeah, that all started to sort of unfold. And then, yeah, after some time, hospital stays and such, yeah, he ended up dying before I turned 10,
Okay.
unfortunately. Yeah. So, yeah, it
And
was,
you were just there. You were left there with his then wife.
yeah. So, yeah, after, yeah, he died, I, I remember before he passed away that he had took me to one side and asked me about where I wanted to live. We did have that conversation. Obviously, we were back and forth at the hospital a lot. And I do remember it was the last Christmas we had. And yeah, he took me to one side and he asked me about where I wanted to live. But ultimately, it was kind of, where do you want to live? But the two options that I had were with his family and to stay with his wife. And at the time, again, it was just very, confusing, didn't know what was going on. And ultimately, yeah, I decided to stay with his wife. That's what I chose to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Was that decision more so to please him? Because that you felt like that's what he wanted you to do?
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just feel like because I'd already been in that space already of, yeah, just trying to make sure that my dad was happy and I wasn't causing any trouble, that I call it like the good girl energy. That's
Okay.
exactly what it was. I was obviously at school. School was very up and down anyway because of the things that had happened. Obviously, that incident I explained about earlier. we did, yeah, have some social services involved and things anyway because of that. But then, yeah, I just felt like I had a good friendship group, and again, this is what I knew. So why not just continue with something rather than starting out and another lot of upheaval and starting over? Just thought, why not just stay with what I know?
Yeah. And there was this other bigger portion of something going on when you were 10 years old as well. So you also adopted drinking at 10,
Mm,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you adopted drinking at 10. Um, and we'll talk about that. Well, go ahead and tell us how that came about and why you felt like that was something that you needed to cope.
Yeah, so obviously I mentioned before about my dad's wife that she would obviously have alcohol most evenings. It mostly consisted of wine. And yeah, I knew that there was alcohol in the house. So I just remember where there were times where she wouldn't be about,
Hmm.
I would just experiment and had a little taste, liked it, felt like it numbed how I was feeling. And yeah, that's ultimately what I continued doing, like I said, from a young age, 10 and upwards. So yeah, I do remember one time, I'm happy to share about it, that I went to school and I'd actually made a slit in one of the bags. It was like a crossover bag. And I, yeah, made a slit in the bag, and it was a little bottle of vodka that I'd put in there. Anyway, cut a long story, I come back from school and put the bag down. And as I put it down, we had tiled floor in the kitchen. Obviously, the bottle clunked, and straight away, her ears pricked up, and what's that? And I was, nothing, nothing. And yeah, she asked again, what is that? And she took the bag, and obviously because I put this slit in, she couldn't work out where the noise was coming from. She knew that obviously it was a bottle, but she couldn't tell where it was coming from. But yeah, ultimately she found the bottle, and yeah, boy did I know about it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I got beat so hard that day. But it
Yeah.
didn't deter me from doing it again. If anything, it just made me think, well, I need to drink more now to sort of get over the pain that I'm feeling. So I just continued.
Right. Um, and to make matters worse, after dad died, his funeral was kind of untimely. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the date of my dad's funeral was actually the day before my birthday. He
Mm.
died early on. He was the 4th of February that he died. And yeah, we all know that funerals can take some time. But yeah, for some unknown reason, it was decided that the funeral would be the day before my birthday. And yeah, I've always found it difficult around birthdays because of that. And honestly, I just feel like there was some sort of reason for it to be there, because his wife knew that that would affect me, it would pain me, and obviously it has. Can't do anything about it, but yeah, something that I, have to carry around.
Is she still alive?
Yeah, yeah, she is. Yeah, so she lives in the town not far from me, and obviously there's been a lot happened over the years
Hmm.
that I'm happy to talk about, but she has stolen a lot of things from me. Ultimately she's taken every possession of my parents, because when my dad moved, he moved the whole house to hers. And yeah, he needed somewhere to store things. And I don't know if them things are still there, but yeah, it's not just possessions, she's stole my inheritance and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely some, like I said, some sort of motive there where it was, in my mind, I feel like she preyed on someone that was vulnerable and
Yeah.
ultimately knew what she was doing in the long run. She knew that if she kept me, she would get money for me, things that she would need to support me, financial wise and stuff like that. But yeah, she hasn't just stolen, you know, things, she's stolen my childhood from me as well. So
Definitely. And there was no legal action that you could have taken or that you can take regarding this?
yeah, so I looked into it, and again, because of the person that she just made it just incredibly difficult. I've never been able to see a copy of my dad's will, and yeah, she's always told me that my dad never left me anything. As far as I know, my dad did leave some possessions for his siblings because yeah, he had siblings. So yeah, I was told about that. But with regards to me, she just used to, throw it out there. Your dad didn't leave you anything, which
Mhm.
I just don't believe it because
Yeah,
I was his only daughter. And
right.
yeah, like even if it was a piece of clothing, or I don't know, some jewelry or something. But to say that he didn't leave me anything is just a lie.
And what a feeling of just total abandonment,
Mhm.
right? And that empty feeling of just being all alone. Like
Yeah.
you had your friend circle. And then I know when we spoke previous, you were telling me the kind of the brief stage with your was it your father's family, your aunt?
Yeah, 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 I did.
And that was brief. That wasn't anything long term. Um, but eh, no one came to rescue you, right?
Mhm.
And we also kind of discussed that aspect of you feeling responsible for certain things. And, like, well, maybe if I would have um, insisted that I go and stay with my aunt, or maybe if I would have insisted, that I tell someone at the school or tell my dad or what have you, you learned a lot of taking on other people's baggage and taking on the responsibilities that were absolutely not yours,
Yeah, yeah, and that's
you
the
know?
yeah, so it's a lot to carry, that's what I mean, my shoulders have been heavy.
Definitely. Um, so we're gonna kind of pause a slight pause there, and I want to ask you currently because your father's birthday or your father's day that he passed away is coming up in what, like 5 days.
Yeah.
How are you doing right now?
I mean, honestly, I think because the years have obviously gone by, I
Hmm.
wouldn't say it gets easier, but I definitely feel like my body remembers, you
Definitely.
know? I'm quite hot on that. I've had to do a lot of work over the years, especially looking into trauma, PTSD and all that. Um, and I know that the body can hold on to things. So for me, it's like the build up to it. It's like I revert back to being young again, if that makes sense. It's like, yeah, my body does remember things.
Yeah.
Um,
Give us an example of some of the physiological reactions that you have during this time.
well, at the moment, I'd say at the moment, it's been 20 years now that I've been dealing with chronic pain and symptoms.
Okay.
And that started when I was around 14 or 15. I first went to the doctors, and then it transpired in 2021 that I have got endometriosis and adenomyosis,
Mhm.
which are both, yeah, chronic health conditions. And it just means that on a daily basis, I am in pain. The pain's never left. And like I said, because I've had to do this work, haven't had anyone else to, guide me. It's just been me.
Mhm.
I've yeah, I've had to delve quite deep into things, which has been tough. But I always say that in order to move forward, I have to go back. So yeah, a lot of these things for me personally, I think have stemmed from my childhood and my upbringing. And yeah, my body has held on to a lot of these things, hence the pain.
Yeah. Your body definitely is a storage for trauma. And a lot of the times your body anticipates the upcoming events because it's almost like preparing itself to relive the event again.
Mm.
And so it it feels and it reacts way before your mind catches up with what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, if you're eating a whole lot, or if you're sleeping a lot, or if you're kind of moody, or all these things, or in a lot of pain, or what have you, it's your body getting ready for that fight or flight moment, for that experience. Um, and a lot of the time it's subconscious, because these traumatic events, especially as traumatic as yours is, there's a lot of things that you bury. A
Mhm.
lot of things that, yes, we can talk about and you can express some of them, but as you said, you're still unfolding a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. I'm saying this heaviness that I feel. And, when people say to me, how have you got through that? Or, how did you cope? I can't sometimes find the words
Mm.
because I don't know how I'm still here.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, the way that I was being abused, you know, um, and I did have one incident where she basically tried to kill me,
Mm.
um, that I haven't shared openly about. I feel comfortable to share it somewhat.
Yeah.
But there was an incident where she did try to take my life. And yeah, I just feel blessed that, that obviously didn't happen and that I'm still here today. But yeah, there has been a lot of deep, dark thoughts, sometimes where I felt like I don't want to be in this world anymore.
Yeah.
And I never attempted anything like that. But there were things that I did to my body, where there was times where I would, stop. I would eat and then I would try and make myself sick. And yeah, in turn, I basically had bulimia for some time. And that was after my dad had died when I was around 11. I'm not
Mhm.
sure I mentioned that, but it's just coming to mind now as we're talking that, yeah, I was brought up again in this environment where everything was structured. You get told what you're eating. And a lot of the things that I was brought up on, I hadn't had those before.
Yeah.
And I would force the food down because I wasn't allowed to get up and do what I wanted unless I'd eaten. And that was kind of drummed into me. You don't get down off the table or wherever you're eating until the plate's finished. So yeah, that's what I would do. And it would almost be, yeah, almost like a purging really in the sense of things, but also a punishment as well to myself because yeah, I just had a lot of I hate towards myself and my body, and how was I allowing someone to inflict all these things on me? And yeah, in turn, I started doing it to myself.
Yeah. And there goes that aspect of blame that we were just talking about a little bit ago too. Because you didn't have control over that,
Mm.
right? And as you feel having the willpower that you had, the determination that you had, and the strength that you had, even though you weren't able to do anything, and stop her from doing what she was doing, you were still, the strength in you was so internally revved up that
Mhm.
eventually you would have gotten out the situation. That is a part of the conditioning. That's a part of the shadow part that we were kind of talking about, of those things that others did to you and made you believe about yourself. And they created this story and this narrative that you've been telling yourself over and over again. And that's how you begin to project yourself out in life, in adulthood, in all relationships. You will always think about, what did I do wrong first, before you acknowledge what someone else did to you.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it makes total sense. And even you just saying that, what comes to mind is this sort of name that I began to give myself, which I would say is the bad omen.
Mm.
I felt like I was the dark cloud and, death was following me and I was the one that was creating these situations or these people dying, and like you're saying about a lot of the blame and guilt and everything just all muddled up together where it was just yeah, you're the reason. And I think because I was having that drummed into my head, even after my dad dying, it was everything just went up a notch then because there wasn't, my dad wasn't there anyway to witness things, but then even more so, it was, yeah, everything just went up a notch basically after my dad died. Yeah, the abuse just got a lot worse. Like I said, the attempt on my life, and yeah, just not knowing where to turn, to be honest. I did try to reach out for help numerous times. Like I said, social services were involved, and yeah, even with that, it was all micromanaged.
Mhm.
Like I'd go out with a social worker, but I'd already been threatened before. If you say anything, you're gonna know about it when you get back. If I read anything that they've wrote down, you're gonna pay the price for it, basically. So it was always drummed into me that, even if I did want to reach out, no one's coming to help you.
Yeah.
They don't believe, like, when I did actually reach out for help, with my family, we had a massive court case and everything. And the long and short of it is that the court case got thrown out because, again, because of what she did for work,
Mhm.
she put on the tears, and ultimately it was thrown out because they'd seen it that not they, she had, voiced it to me that I was this malicious little girl and that I was trying to get someone in trouble because my parents had died and I was angry, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah. And there goes another slap in the face with some blame that wasn't yours, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, like you said, you had all of this stuff coming at you, slapping the blame on you, telling you why this stuff happened and making you the center of the why. So why wouldn't you think that it was you?
Mm,
This is following me. This is and the mere thought of creation at that time as you were growing up, that whole aspect of why was I even put here? Was
mm,
I mean, because you have been suffering since 4 years old.
yeah.
That's when everything is really starting to be mapped in your mind, how you're really starting to understand people and environments and your safety and all the things that are supposed to shape how you see the world.
Mm.
So gosh, I just can't say enough how glad that I am that you are still standing and
Thank
talking.
you.
Um, okay. So we kind of move on a couple of years
Mhm.
and we are at 13.
Yeah.
13, you and your I don't know, do you like calling her stepmom or what do you call her?
No, I just called her my dad's wife.
Your dad's wife.
Yeah.
Mhm. You and your dad's wife have a blowout. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there was quite a big altercation that took place around that age, where the police ended up being called
Mhm.
because, yeah, she had obviously started what she normally did, which would be, I'd maybe looked at her the wrong way, said the wrong thing, and then it escalated. And yeah, she ended up hitting me with one of her boots. Actually, it was one of her army boots, and the print of the boot was actually on my top that I was wearing. I do remember it being like a bright pink top. And yeah, the neighbours had called the police, I believe, and she'd thrown me out into the street, and when I tried to get back, I was trying to obviously get back into the house. I climbed onto the back gate that we had. It's quite a tall gate. I reckon it was probably about 5, 6 foot maybe.
Mhm.
And I'd got my leg over and I was met with her on the other side with a shovel. And she was threatening me, if you try and come back in here, I'm gonna knock you down. So I was out in my pajamas crying, She'd gone back into the house. She began throwing stuff out of the window, my belongings and such. But yeah, ultimately I was arrested, she was arrested, and we were both reprimanded. I believe it was for battery or something. But yeah, obviously being a minor, I don't think I could have been charged or anything. And it was kind of just, yeah, an altercation that had taken place that had escalated. Again, I can't remember the ins and outs of how
Yeah.
much I disclosed about what had happened at that time. But yeah, shortly after that took place, I was thrown out of the family home. Um, And yeah, I ended up going to a family friend that was actually one of her friends, but I'd bumped into her. We used to have a dog and we used to have to take the dog out. And when I bumped into her, she'd always said to me that if I needed anyone, that, I could always go to her. So that's what I did. Went to hers, and yeah, that's where I stayed for a short time.
And let's pause there for a quick second because it's not like people around didn't know what she was doing and what you were going through.
Mm.
You also had people around you that were or that were around that chose not to come in and save you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There was a lot of adults. I had a close childhood friend, and his sister that lived opposite, and their parents, and they did try to help. And in turn, my dad's wife just made it increasingly difficult for that to happen. And they weren't able to get me out of the house. But yeah, that was the only one time that I remember, someone actually, quite often they would step in, especially if it would spill out into the street, or if, I'd been playing out and I'd mention certain things. I do remember, yeah, my friend's dad would go around there, and yeah, he would he would shout, and say, what you doing? And because of where we lived, it was in like a terrace house, so the neighbours next door, I do remember times that they would be looking over the fence
Yeah.
because of the way the houses were set out. You could see in. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, again, it was kind of people, as I've got older and I've bumped into like the neighbour's daughter, for example, she would say, we're really sorry because my mum and dad knew what was going on, but they just didn't know how to help. And it's kind of like when things are going on behind closed doors, people they keep themselves to themselves. They just think, they're going through something. I'm not going to involve myself in it.
right.
But it's just the fact that these people around knew that my parents had died, and this person was meant to be taking care of me and wasn't. And it's
Yeah,
just, yeah, just been severely let down.
definitely. Um, so you stayed at the friend's house
Yeah.
for what, about a year?
Yeah, it was around a year, say around a year, maybe just a bit less than a year.
Right. And then from there, because you were kind of in your teenage rebellion age,
Yeah.
or era, and also still dealing with your grief, dealing with all the abuse, dealing with everything you were dealing with, things just got a little uncomfortable there for the person that had taken you in.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And then you ended up in foster care. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, yeah, like I said, obviously everything was just it was a whirlwind. I was very angry, and looking back now, I did put this family friend, through a lot of shit.
Mhm.
And I was going out, continuing to drink, not telling them where I was going, coming back late at night, staying out all night sometimes. And just in my eyes, I was having fun with my friends, and getting up to no good, but like what you would do as a typical teenager back
Mm.
then. And, mixing with older people and things like that. And yeah, she basically just said that, she was a slightly older lady, and she just said, I can't deal with this. Can't put up with it for much longer. So yeah, it ended up happening that I came back from school, and my dad's sister, so my auntie, she lived in Coventry. So yeah, that was about an hour away, and she was actually at this family friend's house. There was a social worker there because I still obviously had them all involved, and my stuff was all bagged up in black bin bags.
Mhm.
And they told me that they'd made the decision that I was going to be placed in care. So that's what happened. So yeah, as you can imagine, I've come back from school, thinking I'm still going to be able to do all the things I was doing before,
Right.
messing about and such. And yeah, come back to be told, we're taking you down. First, I went to the social services office,
Mhm.
and yeah, I was there for some time. And then I remember being put into a taxi, I think it was, with the social worker. And that's when they took me to the children's home. So I went to the children's home first.
Yeah. And you stayed in now from foster care, you were actually fostered out, right? Like you were living with the family?
Yeah, so once I was in the children's home, I stayed there for around a year. And then, yeah, I was placed with my foster mum. So, yeah, my foster mum's name was Jan, and she also had a daughter called Kate. And I actually went to school with Kate as well. So it was a small world, but it was quite nice because it was a familiar face. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we were the same age. And Jan also had a son that unfortunately had died 2 years prior to me living with them. So I think for Jan, it was just, yeah, she wanted to give back, maybe do something to fill her time. She was disabled at the time. And yeah, just as soon as I met her, I just instantly felt calm, safe, welcomed. Um, obviously it was again a difficult time. I'd been living in this children's home, and thankfully for me, it was a positive experience.
Mm.
The staff were really lovely, friendly. Obviously, there was a lot going on with the other children that lived there, so, police being called, things being broken and smashed, so again, it was quite chaotic. But for me, I felt like that bit of a breather, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
where it felt like I've been taken out of this really traumatic, bad situation. And yeah, a lot of the time you'd think going into care it would be, a lot of people don't have good experiences. But for me, it felt like safety for me because it felt like I had all these people around me that were actually giving me some time. All the staff there that, have to have these conversations with you and check in with you and such. Yeah, like I had that. And I'd never had that before. Never had
Right.
anyone take the time to just actually ask me, like, how are you, Mel? Um, so yeah, for me, it was positive. I mean, to look at, the place wasn't the greatest. There was bars on the windows. Like I said, it's people smashing up doors, windows, and things like that. Police being called and things, but I just very much kept myself to myself. So yeah, when I obviously found Jan and her daughter again, it just felt like relief.
Yeah.
Actually,
And you felt safe.
yeah, which I hadn't experienced, for my whole childhood really. It was just, yeah, it was a really nice experience. We lived in one home, and then because obviously with Jan with her disability, we ended up moving into like a house that was adapted. And it had a pretty cool lift actually that went into Jan's bedroom. So yeah, me and Kate used to like going in that. That's a nice memory. But yeah, I felt happy, content. And yeah, everything was going well until Jan started to become quite unwell, which was separate to her disability. And yeah, she was diagnosed with lung cancer and started having treatment for that. So yeah, she started off with like the chemo and the radiotherapy, a lot of hospital appointments, more than what she was having anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, me and her daughter Kate ultimately became her carers. And she ended up going into remission. So she celebrated her 50th birthday, which she said, gonna have a big party and gonna celebrate. And yeah, she was in remission for 18 months. And then, yeah, we found out that the cancer had turned terminal. So, yeah, she ended up going into hospital in the December of 2010.
Mm.
And yeah, that's where she ultimately died. And it was 4 days before 2 days before Christmas. Yeah,
Okay.
2 days.
Yeah. To have something else stripped away from you,
Mhm.
right? Something that you had just found your balance in, found your footing, found some safety, some care, some nurturing. Um, because you had already had losses before and you were grieving so many things coming up to all to this point as well, how would you say that you processed Jan's death from the previous losses that you had?
Yeah, so I feel like with my parents, I just obviously didn't have the time or the space. I didn't have the support to process anything because it was just all chaos and disruption and trauma upon trauma. But with Jan, it's the first time that I actually had to sit with
Yeah.
how I was feeling, and it was uncomfortable because I'd never had previous to that. I'd never had grief explained to me as a child. You know, when I had the news given to me that my dad had died, it was, your dad's gone to be with the angels. That's how I was told.
Yeah.
And that's something that's always stuck for me. And again, you know, I can't fault the way that it was, told to me, but at the same time, I wish that it had been worded in a different way, because for me, it was again that confusion of, like, where do you mean? Like, where's my dad? Like, when's he coming back? Like,
Yeah.
in my eyes and the way that I look at things with my own children, I use the word died. You know,
Yeah.
it's not, my dad's gone to, my dad didn't go to sleep. Like, my dad died. Um, and yeah, obviously, yes, for some people it can come across a bit blunt, but that's the way that I've carried on things now. But yeah, going back to what you were saying with Jan, I just felt like, that was the first time that I actually had to go head to head with the grief, and working through things piece by piece, really, layer by layer, because it was a big blow losing Jan. Like, it was the first time that I felt like I had that mother figure, that
Mhm.
I needed. Like, I don't have any memories of my mum, but
Yeah.
I know that, like, Jan was sent to me because my mum actually died on Jan's birthday. So when,
Oh, okay.
what would have been Jan's birthday is my mum's death day. Um, I didn't discover that until obviously sometime after, where I put
Yeah.
two and two together, and I thought, there's a reason that Jan's been put into my life, and to just have that person taken away from me, over some time, because I had to obviously watch her deteriorate, um,
Right.
and it was difficult, really difficult time.
And, um, but you and her daughter, Kate, you guys stayed close during this time of.
Yeah, so I think, like, it was difficult for Kate because obviously she'd already experienced the death of her brother and then her mum, and then also in that time as well, I forgot to mention about Jan's mum actually was diagnosed with the same cancer.
Mhm.
So when I said about the 4 days, it was the 4 days between their deaths. Yes, they were both in the December, 4 days apart. That they died. So you know, it's not an odd blessing, but I know that they're together.
Yeah.
Um, and
Definitely. Um, Now had you stopped drinking at this time, or were you choosing a different coping mechanism during the Jan's passing time?
no, so I was still drinking. So when Jan died, it was before my 21st birthday, and I was still very much drinking. Not necessarily the way that it had been when I was in, like, my younger years, where it'd be quite secretive and sly. It was more of, going out with my girls and,
Okay.
experiencing, like, the clubbing and things like that. And I did that for some time, but it wasn't long after that that I decided to, as you will, knock it on the head. Something, I don't know what it was, just told me, I just don't want to be doing this anymore.
Yeah. Good job. And it was a learned habit because you didn't have anything else that was making you feel good.
Mm,
And so you needed something to give you a rush. You needed something to make you feel euphoric and take you outside of your elements because everything else was just so daunting.
mm.
When Ben passed away, you went to, well, because you were in high school, right? Were you
Yeah,
in high?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, So you met a certain someone, you had a certain someone in high school, and then when Jan died, kind of tell us that story.
Yeah, so after Jan died, there is a little bit more after that.
Mm.
So I obviously mentioned about my brothers earlier on. So I had two brothers that were obviously the same mum, different dad. And I didn't have an overly close relationship with both of them, one more than the other. And I basically received a phone call. This was in the February. So again, February being that hard month already, I then, had a phone call to say that this was from one of my brothers saying that my other brother was in hospital. He'd had a car accident, and ultimately they'd found out that he had a brain tumor that hadn't been detected. And he ended up dying that week. Yeah, so it was all again just another sudden, loss, and unexpected as well. Like I said, we weren't overly close, but again, just knowing that that was someone that was a part of my mum, and obviously there was times where we were together, but we didn't live together. He had his own family and own children and things. But again, it was just another, a death. And
Mhm.
again, why that sort of bad omen feeling was there, because it was, why does everyone keep dying around me? Mm.
Right.
So like that obviously happened. But going back to what you were saying, that I ended up meeting my partner. So I'd we'd already been friends anyway from when I was young age. And then when I turned 16 and I was living in the children's home, I just so happened, because of where I was, it was in a different village. I ended up having to travel to get to school. And sometimes I would just stay out and I would just chill out with friends. And I ended up seeing him. We hadn't seen each other for a while, but I ended up seeing him this one time. And it kind of just went from there, really. He would come and visit me at the children's home. I started going over to visit his family. I already knew of his family, but, meeting them and, going there for dinners and things. And then, after Jan died, I didn't know where I was going to be living. And his mum kindly offered for me to live with him and his siblings and his mum. So that's what I ended up doing. And when my brother obviously had died, I was living there at the time with them.
Yeah. That is a journey within a journey within a journey within a journey within itself from the age of 4 all the way up until, what, 16,
Mm.
right? It's almost like you lived multiple lives, but that they just all ran together. I want you to tell me one thing that you would tell the 5-year-old you at this point in your life right now.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is just the words, "I am safe," or "You are safe."
Yeah.
And you didn't deserve the things that happened to you, and it wasn't your fault. And I just got to put down what's not mine to carry anymore.
Mhm. And
Uh,
what would you tell the 10-year-old you?
Um, 10-year-old. Um, don't know. I think it would probably be the same, really. It's just kind of just it all rolls into all the years, really, that I've once been, just that it wasn't your fault. And stop blaming yourself.
Well,
Um, and that things won't necessarily get better, but they will get slightly easier.
yeah,
Like you will make it out the other side. Just maybe a bit of reassurance, I guess.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So right here is going to be our part 1 stopping point. But
Mhm.
we're going to do part 2 for Mel Robinson coming up. And we are going to go into 16 all the way up to where you are now. And we're going to talk a lot about what the grief, what the losses did to you, how it made you, how it shaped you, basically, into the adult that you are right now, and how it shaped you as a mother, how it shaped you as a partner, and just the relationship that you have with yourself, right? So, we are going to tie up and we are going to get back with you guys in a week or so. And we're going to have part two.